One morning, a confused Ozzy Osbourne woke up in a jail cell. When the officers told him what he'd done, he was absolutely horrified. As an iconic titan of music, Ozzy paved the way for heavy metal. He developed a reputation for his legendary vocals, dark persona, and often unhinged antics. But he also had a softer side that cared for his family and pushed him to continue performing for his fans, right up until the end. Born as John Michael Osbourne on December 3rd, 1948, people started calling him Ozzy from an early age. Growing up in Birmingham, England, he saw the rise of some of the most iconic British bands. He later referred to She Loves You by the Beatles as his inspiration for starting a music career. In his teens, he fell in with the wrong crowd and ended up in trouble with the law for shoplifting. Rather than pay his son's fine, Ozzy's father came up with a harsh way to teach him a lesson, leaving him to spend 6 weeks incarcerated. After that, Ozzy started to put more energy into his music. By the late 60s, he was getting his footing as a musician and gaining experience, with one of his early projects being the group Rare Breed with bassist Geezer Butler. While this band was short-lived, another chance arrived when Bill Ward and Tony Iommi of the group Polka Tulk Blues recruited both musicians. This new band went through a couple of name changes before deciding on Black Sabbath in 1969, and they quickly found their niche.
Black Sabbath.
Inspired by the horror genre of the era, Black Sabbath integrated a darker vibe into their work, making their lyrics more grim and focusing on a heavier form of blues. After some moderate success in the UK, the band signed with Warner Brothers Records as their American label and released their eponymous debut album in 1970, which launched the band to fame. Not long after the release, Ozzy met Thelma Riley, and the two married before the year was out. Life on the road isn't the best for starting a family, so when Ozzy adopted Thelma's son and the couple had 2 more children, he wasn't in any position to be a good father. But then he went down an even darker path, throwing himself into drink and drugs. As Black Sabbath grew into a phenomenon, they reached a point where they sought new management, which led to a particularly fateful encounter for Ozzy. The band soon chose manager Don Arden, whose daughter Sharon worked as his receptionist. Near the end of the 70s, Black Sabbath were ready to get back to the studio, but any harmony they had in the beginning was now almost non-existent. Tensions quickly grew into conflict, and Ozzy felt like his vocals were constantly questioned and picked apart by guitarist Tony Iommi. All of this resulted in a difficult decision. According to his bandmates, Ozzy's substance use had gotten out of control and made him untrustworthy, prompting Don Arden to fire the singer in 1979. Being in Black Sabbath was everything to Ozzy, which made his removal from the group all the more devastating. Having spent the last decade in a haze, he coped with his dismissal the only way he knew how, by spending 3 months inebriated in his hotel room. Apparently, the bridge between Ozzy and Don Arden hadn't been completely destroyed, as Arden soon approached the singer with a new offer for a solo career. Desperate to resume his passion, Ozzy signed on with Jet Records and began recording new material. To help him, Arden sent his daughter Sharon to assist Ozzy in Los Angeles. Bringing in guitarist Randy Rhoads, keyboardist Don Airey and bassist Bob Daisley, Ozzy recorded his debut solo album, Blizzard of Oz. He also leaned more into a familiar persona, one that caused quite a controversy. Even as he found his groove as a solo musician, Ozzy maintained a dark public image through his aesthetic and lyrics, drawing outrage in the process. Claiming that his songs and persona promoted Satanism, many religious groups denounced him. In reality, Ozzy was a member of the Church of England and rejected these claims. Ozzy and Sharon spent more and more time together until a romance blossomed, despite some complications. Not only did they seem completely different, which resulted in frequent arguments, but Ozzy was already a married man. Intermingled with Ozzy's dark image was his reputation for being completely unhinged, even in what should have been professional situations. In 1981, while meeting with an executive from CBS Records, he wanted to make a peaceful gesture, only for it to end in infamy. Ozzy's plan was to release a flock of doves. However, he was so inebriated that he snatched one of the birds and bit off its head. Quite predictably, the CBS executive was completely horrified. He ended the meeting right then and there and summoned security. As the singer was then walked off the property, his addled mind pushed him to grab another dove and do it again, likely ruining any future negotiations. But that isn't even the most famous story about Ozzy biting an animal. During a concert in 1982, an attendee threw a live bat onto the stage, and playing into his wild persona, Ozzy bit into what he thought was a rubber bat, only to have it bite him back. Meanwhile, tensions had once again risen with his fellow musicians. Ozzy had no plans to slow down his indulgent lifestyle, and it quickly got him into more trouble, both outside of the band and within. It all bubbled to the surface on one fateful day in 1982 when he drank so much that he lunged at his bandmates and fired all of them. However, once he sobered up, he didn't remember doing any of it. Luckily, he had someone else to ground him. By 1982, Ozzy's habits had deteriorated his marriage to the point that he and Thelma finally divorced, but he was already in love with someone else. In the same year, he and Sharon married. In the following years, his family grew as Sharon gave birth to 3 more of his children. Shortly before his second marriage, Ozzy experienced a profound heartbreak when, in March 1982, Randy Rhoads died in a plane crash, which also took the lives of Ozzy's tour bus driver and costume and makeup designer. Faced with the horrifying aftermath of losing 3 people who'd seen him at his best and his worst, Ozzy found himself unable to cope. Following his previous blow-up with the band, Ozzy's friendship with Rhoads had never been the same, which only made the loss harder to deal with. Over the 1980s, Ozzy descended deeper into his dependence on drugs, and Sharon sent him away for 6 months to get sober. Entering the 90s, the constant strain of touring had pushed Ozzy to the limit, and he no longer believed he could continue. After much deliberation, he announced his plan to retire from touring. As a final send-off, he embarked on one last tour in 1992, which he called No More Tours. Only 3 years later, after releasing his next album, Osmosis, he announced his return to the stage with the aptly named Retirement Sucks Tour. As successful as he was still considered controversial. In 1996, the organisers for Lollapalooza turned down Ozzy's offer to perform. He shot back by organising his own 2-day festival called Ozzfest, which was such a hit that it became an annual event. The 1997 Ozzfest allowed him to return to his roots, as Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler joined him in an official Black Sabbath reunion. For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factinate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details. Sharon was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2002. Even after a surgery that year, her doctor only gave her a 33% chance of survival. For Ozzy, the news of Sharon's cancer hurt him like nothing had before, and he was inconsolable throughout her sickness and into her recovery. but he also had his own health issues. At 55 years old, he wasn't the same young rock star he had been, and decades of substance use only aged him more. He started having chronic tremors, and after years of dismissing it as a result of his lifestyle, he finally went to the doctor in 2003. He discovered he had a mild form of Parkinson's disease, which he had to medicate for the rest of his life. By the end of 2003, Ozzy found himself back at the hospital. While riding a quad bike at his home in Buckinghamshire, he lost control and crashed. He had 8 broken ribs, as well as a broken collarbone and neck vertebrae. While recovering in the hospital, he hit another impressive milestone when a single of his reached #1 in the UK for the first time, a rendition of the Black Sabbath song Changes, this time a duet sung by Ozzy and his daughter Kelly. In the early 2000s, fans of Ozzy were able to get a look at his private life with his MTV series, The Osbournes.
I'm not, just calm down, man.
Considered one of the first reality shows to follow a celebrity family, the series featured Ozzy, Sharon, and their children, Jack and Kelly. Meanwhile, their eldest daughter, Amy, declined to appear. 6 years after his last studio album, Ozzy returned to the recording booth to work on his next one, Black Rain. Having been sober for some time, he was able to work far more clearly and creatively. Upon the album's release in 2007, listeners were met with a more contemplative and serious Ozzy than they were familiar with. Moving into the 2010s, Ozzy and the other original members of Black Sabbath thought it was time to get together again and release another album in 2013. Then, 5 years later, they kicked off their farewell tour, allowing fans to see the foundational metal band one more time. While Ozzy was able to perform some of his tour dates until the end of 2018, the following year brought further difficulties, this time ones that made it impossible for him to continue. Not only did he come down with pneumonia, but he also suffered a severe fall at his home, putting the future of his career in jeopardy. Shortly after, he revealed another aspect of his condition. The battle with addiction is a lifelong one, and Ozzy's was no different. He went through many ups and downs, but by 2021 he was happy to report that he'd remained sober for the past 7 years. Though he'd had his struggles and relapses, the lessons he'd learned in rehab back in 1989 had stuck with him, and the story of how he wound up there was absolutely jaw-dropping. Ozzy's antics often led him to suffering blackouts where he couldn't remember what he'd done. On one occasion, in 1989, Ozzy played at the Moscow Music Peace Festival. He partied hard that night, and the next morning he made a disturbing realisation. He was behind bars. Terrified of what he'd done, he urged an officer to explain to him. That's when he learned that, in his stupor, he'd attempted to strangle his wife, Sharon. That was the incident that had been Sharon's final straw, the one that ended with her sending him to rehab for 6 months. On July 5th, 2025, Ozzy appeared before a crowd of 40,000 fans for a final spectacular performance titled Back to the Beginning. This farewell extravaganza featured the original Black Sabbath members and several other big names in metal playing alongside the Prince of Darkness. As it was his last show, he made sure to do it in style. Since his Parkinson's hindered his ability to stand on his own, Ozzy did his final performance from a spot befitting of his status, seated in a dark and ornate throne. He donated all the proceeds to the Cure Parkinson's Trust and other charities. Before the show, Ozzy did a slew of interviews to promote the event, and in one he made a chilling premonition. He lived for just another 17 days after the show. In his final days, Ozzy Osbourne had the benefit of seeing the impact he had left on the world and received a proper farewell from his friends, family and fans. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. If you want a say in who we cover next, join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.